This evening, I'm focusing on the evacuation of Indian students from parts of Ukraine. Number one, where do these efforts currently stand? Number two, how long before the approximately 8,000 who are still stranded in that country are safe back home? Number three, why are so many blaming students for staying on in Ukraine? I'm going to put out just pure facts on government advisories. Did they come on time, for instance? My name is Anubha Bhonsle, and this is definitely newsworthy. You're going to see it's worth your time, your attention, and your support. Let's start. 12,000 Indian students are back home. About 8,000 or so are still stranded in Ukraine. Kyiv is one of the cities of concern. It has no Indians residing. As of today, the government claims that all students who were housed in hostels or bunkers or safe houses are currently en route to evacuation points. In fact, the embassy in Kyiv has also shut. The second city of focus is Kharkiv. It is Ukraine's second largest city. It's also the city where an Indian student lost his life in shelling yesterday. It's continuing to see violence. Around 2,000 Indian students are still there, and they're sheltering in Soviet-era bunkers. Obviously, these cities are active war zones, which makes the government's task of extricating students from there tougher. But really, adding to that, over the last 3 to 4 days has been a lack of clear information about what students should really do. We've been in touch with a few hundred students across all our platforms, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, etc. And this is really the quality of information that they're dealing with. March 1, that's yesterday, a government advisory asked students to leave Kyiv by trains or any other means available. Just hours before, on 1st of March, the Union Minister, General V.K. Singh, who is in Poland right now, tweeted, "Stay where you are, don't move until you're told." 28th February, an advisory asked them to take trains from Kyiv to evacuation points and to expect delays and crowding. 26th Feb, the advisory asked students in Kyiv and Kharkiv to shelter in place and not move to border points. Now, as I said, this is an active war zone, so obviously these advisories are bound to change. But please think for a moment from the perspective of students who are stuck in these bunkers and shelter homes, which they are likely seeing for the first time in their life, without food, without water. They are obviously traumatized. They're using social media. They need support, which is what makes a lot of the narratives on social media from average citizens, from politicians, even on our Instagram grid, deeply problematic. That these are students who somehow fail to get admissions in India, or they are really a bunch of privileged folk and all they want is free flight tickets, that they simply did not care about government advisories and leave on time. I want to counter the last point, the last narrative, with some facts, and please decide for yourself. February 15th is the first advisory, saying Indian nationals who stay is non-essential to consider leaving Ukraine. Now, you and I can get into a discussion about whether this is a strong enough advisory or not, or whether students whose classes were being held both in offline and in online mode, whose universities had said that they would lose a year if they left, did consider this advisory or their stay as essential or non-essential. Now, by this time, that's 15th of February, the US, UK, Estonia, Norway had asked their citizens to leave. So had Germany, Australia, Netherlands, and Japan. What did India do? Well, we had issued this advisory that I pointed out too. Do you want to contrast this with the advisory we gave for Yemen in 2015? Well, there it is on your screens. The Foreign Secretary, in a briefing, was asked this very question, and he said that there was fair and advance warning and notice to students, but they simply didn't want to leave. the government is not entirely wrong here. It started a process of gauging the number of students through an online registration form on the 25th of January. Based on the responses that they collected till the end of the month, the government figured that there were about 20,000 odd Indian students who were in different parts of Ukraine. But after that, there's been relative silence till the 15th of February. In fact, a day later, the 16th of February, the government released a note, an FAQ note, so to speak, asking students to book commercial flights out of Ukraine, either direct or via connections. Remember, the direct flights were not operating daily at this point. Finally, on February 18th, 3 special Air India flights were announced for the 22nd, the 24th, and the 26th. They were obviously booked out within minutes, and prices had simply skyrocketed. On February 20th is the second advisory from the ministry. I urge you to please note the language here. All Indian students are advised to leave Ukraine temporarily. February 22nd is the strongest advisory. Leave rather than wait for confirmation from universities. By this time, the situation had escalated and flights were either getting sometimes cancelled or turning back. The only point I'm trying to underline here is that there could have been a greater sense of urgency that one could or should have expected from the government since January 25th that has been lacking. Now, where do evacuations stand now, and how long could it be before all are safely home? Remember, for now, Indians are being evacuated from Ukraine's western borders. Those en route from Kyiv and those stranded in Kharkiv are at least about 1,000 kilometers away from a border point where evacuation is taking place. They have been asked to get on trains or commercial vehicles displaying the Indian flag very, very prominently. But students that we are in touch with have responded by saying that trains are sometimes running late, they are sometimes being stopped, they are obviously overcrowded, and getting out of their bunkers and safe houses to reach train stations has not exactly been a walk in the park. So this process, I agree, by itself is giving or could give parents and family members some anxious moments. The silver lining is everything is in high gear and most families are in touch with their children. What's happening at the border points from where India is evacuating students? Well, the government has now managed to convince Poland to drop all those visa and paperwork requirements for Indian students. You may have seen visuals on social media, on channels, etc. Thousands have been stuck at Ukraine's borders with Poland and Romania. The temperatures have been freezing. They've not had food, water, or even a change of clothes. The Indian Air Force has now been pressed into service. In fact, an aircraft took off for Romania right this morning. 4 union ministers are in Ukraine's neighboring countries, namely Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Moldova, to ostensibly make this entire process easier, faster, and more seamless. Now, whether this move is essential, non-essential, late, or whether ministers can really do anything to add to the strength of Indian missions in these countries is again a bit of a subjective debate, and I can't answer that entirely. At the border points, there have been allegations of racism, of Indians and Africans not being allowed to cross, of being treated badly, of pedestrians not being allowed to cross for, among other reasons, a payback of India's abstention at the United Nations Security Council. Again, these allegations can only be partly verified. Perhaps one can hope that the ministers are going to bring in some heft to ensure that Indians are among the nationalities that walk out of Ukraine safely. Let me answer what is possibly a top-of-the-mind question for all of you, for parents and family members specifically. How long is this going to take? We put that question to a few people. who have done past evacuations from Kabul, Yemen, and even prior, there is no one definite answer. The range has been within a week, 7 days possibly. I have to underline, the government has not put out a number, and all hopes are that deploying the Air Force is going to now or has already speeded up the process. Remember, half of those stranded, we started with a figure of 20,000, more than half are now back home. If there are any more aspects of this evacuation that we can bring more clarity to, please leave a comment. We'll try and answer to the best of our ability at the fastest. The need of the hour, both here in India and Ukraine, where students are stranded, is really credible and clear information and not attacks of the kind we are seeing. We'll continue to bring this information for you on our Instagram grid, on YouTube, and via WhatsApp Worthy. I just want to tell you, if you don't know, it's a way for you to get news in your WhatsApp inbox once a day. You get no noise, just credible, clean information that's fact-checked without all the drama, just once a day. I do believe it will change the way you see and consume news. So use that QR code that's been flashing on the screen and I'll add you to the list right away. If you've been watching, thank you for your time.